Welcome to Sister Wife Reactions. My name is Amanda, and this is Season 19, Episode 4, How the Mighty Have Fallen. Just a quick note before we get started with the episode. You will hear my dog coughing in the background. I do apologize about that. I did not realize the microphone would pick it up. All right, back to the episode. I'm very excited to be with you guys and to cover this episode. There's a lot I want to say, so I want to get to it. Here we go. I do want to say with basically the first half of the episode, I'm just going to touch on it very lightly because I have a lot to say, but what I have to say concerns like the last half of the episode. This episode, we are opening with McKelty. Now, I will say that I'm not that interested in what's going on here, but I do want to mention it. Her newborns look so cute when Christine's holding them and they're all wrapped up. But I don't have much to say about this. I don't find it that interesting. I find I'm seeing McKelty on my screen a lot with Tony. There's just not much to say here. So I just want to, congratulations to them on the new babies. But, that's about it for me. I also wanted to touch on just a couple different things before I get into the big part of what I really want to talk about. We're also seeing all the Thanksgiving plans. We're seeing Mary's alone on Thanksgiving and claiming that she's sick in bed. We're seeing, Janelle with her boys and Peyton. We're seeing Christine obviously with McKelty and Tony, but you're seeing her girls as well. And it's just all very wholesome and whatever. There's not anything really interesting about it. Even though they want to make it a big deal, we've been seeing this for at least the past couple of seasons, I would say, because even though they were technically still married to Kody, they were all living these individual lives. So there's not that much that I really want to touch on with this. And then also something that happens kind of towards the end of the episode, but I feel like it's just a weird pop-in. Like towards the end of the episode, we see that Christine's talking about she's been on her second date with David. It seems like it's supposed to be seen to kind of break up the tension of the whole Robyn and Kody conversation. But really, it could have just been at this first half that they're backtracking to their dating life. Do we care to see the dating life? I don't know. I just feel like it wasn't that interesting. It's like, fine, you want us to be invested, but we already know you marry him. So what is there to be invested in? But the big part of this episode that I want to talk about has to do with the whole Kody and Robyn conversation. I just cannot believe the two of them. I cannot believe everything that Kody is saying. This last half of the episode just put me on a rant. I'm getting on my soapbox. I'm getting on my rant about it because I cannot believe what he says. I did make a note of a few things he says, but it's like, I feel like in a way he's saying the thing that not only his kids, but anybody who's experienced a father like this. Like, this is the fear of this is how your father actually behaves. This isn't the truth. That there's some excuse, there's some reason, some hurdle of why they're not a great father, of why they're not more involved. I think the fear in the back of our minds is that our father is the super selfish person who just doesn't care. And we don't really want to believe that. And I feel so sad for his kids, and I hope that they don't watch this episode because this is just really sad to have your father say on national TV that he just can't be bothered to try enough. He can't be bothered to look past himself and his own selfishness. Like, it isn't enough just to love them. Like, they have to have something that he can benefit from that's worthy of his time. And I think everything he's saying is just evidence against him, things mounting against him. It's not going to make the relationship with his kids any easier. It's going to make everything so much more difficult. A couple of things I want to point out is that I think the biggest thing for me, there are individual things he said, but the thing I kept noticing through this conversation is that he can't recognize the feelings in other people. Like, even when he's talking to Robyn, who's supposedly like the love of his life, he can't acknowledge this feeling she's having of like, basically I see it from her point of view of that if she had a falling out with any of her kids, she would do anything she could to repair that relationship because she doesn't want to live a life where she's not connected with them. And she just can't understand why he's okay with that. But he can't even meet her there in her emotions. he is constantly doing this kind of looping or circling back to how he's correct and he's right and he didn't do anything wrong. But he can't even sympathize with her emotions. He's trying the whole time, he's just manipulating her to sympathize with him. And then on top of that, he can't even put himself in the shoes of his kids, of how his kids would feel, or maybe how they might be hurt and they might be lashing out. Even though she keeps trying to remind him, he just can't do that. Even to the point of towards the end of the conversation where he's saying he's angry, but he's kind of this, it seems like a pretend crying thing. And to me, it just stands out as like someone who can't regulate their emotions properly. We see this a lot with Mary on the show too, where she's always laughing at serious things or laughing at sad things. There's this dysregulation of emotion happening with what you're saying and behaving, not matching with your words. And we're seeing this over and over in this conversation that Kody is having with Robyn. And it's wild because I think we've seen it in the show, but this just concentrates it more on how much he has to deflect, how much he can't take responsibility, how much he is always kind of trying to manipulate it to make it about him or make someone believe that he's actually hearing them. Which this entire conversation, he's not hearing Robyn at all. He's not going to make any kind of change. He has really just manipulated her into pacifying to whatever he wants. And we see from Robyn that she knows there's only a certain amount that she can push things, and that's it. So even though she's pushing and pushing him, in the end, she really just kind of settled and didn't hold up that boundary with him. Because his last statement is so infuriating to me that he's like, oh, well, I think I might be able to try a little bit. Where it's like, that's what you're already doing. You're doing less than the minimal thing. You're only trying to contact your children that it's easier, convenient for you, or don't bring up the reality of situations. So this whole thing was just like, if I didn't think he had narcissistic traits before, I definitely think he does now. And his ability to love and care for people is very conditional on what they do for him. And I just think that's really, really sad. Not sad for the children especially, but also sad for these women who are married to him for years. Like, that this is how he has always been. And I think it's just sad because we've seen so much on the show of these different women trying to improve their marriages and be on his good side and everything. And it was like, what he said is what he really meant, is that it was so conditional and so based upon what they could do for him. Like all these the episodes we saw of Christine and Kody where they're doing marriage counseling, all this stuff. And he's telling her, like, if you just embrace the whole family, then we'll all be good. And I think, at least for me, I was trying to interpret that in a more like emotional way of him trying to connect with her or something. Not it being his literal words of you do these things and I will give you more affection or attention is exactly what he meant. And so, and we know from like the history of the show, if he ever says, you know, to the wives or the family or whatever, he means Robyn. So if Christine would have done something that was something Robyn needed and could tell Kody that Christine did that thing for her or helped her, that's what he meant, is that Christine needed to do things that Robyn needed. And I don't know exactly what that would have been because it seemed like Christine took care of the kids forever. So would it be her somehow taking care of Robyn's kids? I'm not sure because Robyn had a nanny and stuff. But she also didn't want Christine to take care of her kids. So I'm not sure what the thing is, but I just feel like he's definitely being literal here. At any time I would have tried to interpret it in an emotional way. So I don't know. This conversation is very eye-opening for me on that he's just literal. Like there's no emotional subtext. There's no anything else to it. He's literal. He's transactional. He sees his family and all his kids as business partners or acquaintances. Like, what do you give me? It doesn't matter who you are. Which is so sad for me because I look at this like, they're your kids, so you should just love your kids, period. If they don't bring anything, if they're your favorite, not your favorite, whatever interest or thing they have, the baseline is they're your kids and you love them. And then on top of that is the individual relationships with you have with your kids, and so much more. But he doesn't even freaking have that baseline with his children, which I think is so sad. Which in turn, I think just shows he only had that baseline with his wives if they were doing what he wanted them to do. But besides that, he would just manipulate them and pin them against each other and raise these expectations on what they do, while never having that expectation being raised on himself or accepting it to be raised when he, has these other relationships with these other women as well, with all of his wives. The gall of him demonizing Madison because she moved, that blew my mind. Saying that, well, she moved away so I couldn't see her kids, and that's on her. Like, she shouldn't expect me to be involved because she moved, is so rich coming from this man who has uprooted and moved his family many times. But yet, his parents, the wife's parents, grandparents have made trips to come and see them and be like part of the big family celebration thing, and other things in the show where we've seen the parents come in. Like, they made an effort. But he's kind of the king of moving, wants to blame his daughter who's moved basically from Vegas to North Carolina. Like, she hasn't done all these moves, all this craziness of her dad. So this is just an excuse period, but I just thought it was so rich coming from someone who moves every couple of years with no regard for family relations. I mean, even when Christine confronted him on the property about how she wanted to move back to Utah to be closer to family, it was like, behind closed doors, he was agreeing with her. But in front of everybody else, he put her on the spot like that's never going to happen. Like, he doesn't give a crap about family. He just does whatever he wants. But yet he wants Madison to do something he wouldn't do himself. His comment about, he said, the children who will allow me to do it, that's who he's going to talk to and have relationship with. And this to me just stood out because it brought me back to, I think it's a verse in the Bible, but it's a statement about that it's easy to love people who are loving towards you, and it's harder to love people who are not. And like, that's where the real value in someone knows that you care about them, love them, is even when they're maybe not lovable or not the most agreeable or whatever, that you still love them. And it just stuck in my mind when he was saying all this, because it's like, if you're only nice to your kids who are nice to you and make you feel comfortable, is this really love? Is that really love? Are you really loving your children? And how many of your children are you excluding because they're not telling you what you want to hear? And just another way that it kind of broke my heart for his kids is, this is not what actually loving your kids looks like, where it's their job to make it easy and convenient for you. No, that is not how that works. It treats his kids like strangers, acquaintance, business partners. That language he was using about talking about them, it just sounded so much of someone distant from you, not your own children. Like, when they get it together, when they don't blame me, when they don't have animosity for me and all this stuff. It's like he's talking about them so separately, like it was a business deal gone bad or something, or good friends that became acquaintances and it's not worth your time. Like, the language is so distant, when I just feel like, these are your children. Why are you talking like this? Like, you should love them regardless. And because you've had so many kids, you have so many different age ranges, and you have so many different milestones and things they're going through in their life. That, yeah, it's complicated, and yeah, it may be difficult, but you're the one that chose to be polygamous and have multiple wives and have all of these children. He knows more about the older children's lives and what they're up to, but he doesn't know them personally or deeper than that. And that with his younger children that aren't Robyn's children, he doesn't know what's going on in their life. He might be able to call them and connect with them more easily, but he doesn't. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of like the uncle that you never really talk to, but you might see around Christmas every couple of years or something. It reminds me of something like that. He doesn't really know what's going on, and he's just asking kind of very basic kind of questions. There's no real deep personal relationship there. And I think maybe the most obvious sign of this is what we see in Truly, that she doesn't really know her dad. She's not really comfortable around him, which I think is very obvious in the show. And I just wonder now with him and Christine split, like, how much of an effort is being made with Truly, and how much does she really want to be around her dad? Even in I think it was 2 seasons ago where, Christine and Kody were, technically still together, but there was a scene where Christine was talking about how, like, he's just not around, so it wouldn't really make that big of a difference to Truly's life. Like, to say, oh, well, your dad's not going to be around, because he's already not around. So I just wonder how much has developed with that relationship, if he truly does know what's going on with her or not. I was liking what Robyn was doing and confronting him in this, and I did believe her for a bit. It got to kind of this end of the conversation, which honestly I would say to TLC, like, you should have just cut off those last, like, maybe even 5 minutes, because the moment she started going into things about COVID and things about faulting the moms for spreading lies and all this stuff was when she lost me. Before that, I thought she was making really good points. And I did feel like she was pushing him to have a relationship with his kids. Like, I was forgetting all about how much she hoarded Kody to herself and her kids, and how much she has kind of isolated her kids from the family. Like, all these things that she's done through the years. In this conversation, I was kind of forgetting about this. But then those last couple minutes, it was like, oh, yep, this is the same old Robyn. Like, this is for show. This is lies. This is to make yourself look better. And even more so, I really feel like if Robyn would make that move first, like, yeah, put the pressure on Kody to repair his relationships, but I think there's a lot she could do. Like, she could reach out to the other kids and be apologetic and be understanding and do all the things she was saying. And I think that would help some of, at least for herself. I don't think she's going to do that because she's on, like, Team Kody, and she needs to do what he wants, and he doesn't want to be that open and forgiving to his kids. But I feel like she could, and that could open a door. Like, she could be apologetic, and she could reach out and say that she cares about them and that she wants them to have a relationship with their dad, and do all that. She could, but she's not doing that. She's just isolating her kids. And all the talk she's made about how these other kids in the family are hurtful to her, like, she could be working on repairing all of that. Because what I've seen from these kids, not just on the show, but, like, their Instagrams and all that kind of stuff, is they seem to be a pretty forgiving family. That if you're like, hey, I'm sorry and whatever, like, they just seem to be forgiving of each other. It doesn't seem to me that they really hold these long grudges. So I think that it could be resolved. But a huge part of this problem is that Robyn isn't doing that. She isn't saying she was wrong, or calling them and saying, hey, talk to your dad, or hey, come to this thing that we're doing, or anything. Like they could easily, the kids that are closer, at least, they could easily say, hey, we're going to have dinner, come over, or whatever. They could be more open and making more an effort, and she's not making the effort either. So some of this is just really rich coming from her, because she also is having this lack of accountability for what she could be doing in this. Yeah, and then I just made some more notes about how Kody's talking. It's just like, we see he can't take responsibility. Anytime it gets too close to the vest for him, he's constantly changing the topic. He's trying to be like, it's not my problem. It's not anything that I have to do. What's my crime I committed? And so he's always kind of trying to spin this conversation of, like, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. And when that's not working on Robyn, then he'll try just kind of letting her talk and kind of fake like he's empathizing with her, and he's not. And then on top of that, he turns it that it's the kid's problem. It's their problem. That it's not his problem, or, oh, was this just about the mothers? Just this whole thing of raising this level of intensity, being completely insensitive and bashing their moms. Are you really going to get through to your kids that are really close to their mothers by bashing their mothers? Like, yes, these marriages are over, but you and that mother are still the parent of those children. So that's you're just doing a huge disservice to yourself by even talking down about them. Because that's a parent they're close to, and a parent they're closer to than they are to him. And he just really fails to see that, and he really fails to see all the damage that he's doing on his kids. I mean, in the end, these narcissistic kind of traits, these patterns of reasoning are really working on Robyn, because in the end, he's not agreeing to any kind of change. He's already saying at the very beginning of the conversation, he was saying that he's doing little things. And at the end, she's getting him to commit and promise that he'll keep doing little things. But he's just going to keep doing what he's doing because it doesn't serve him. It doesn't make him look good. He's not the center of attention. He can't have control over people. So in the end, it just doesn't serve him at all. We see this a lot whenever he's talking about Madison. Like, there is this injury to his pride or whatever that he doesn't have more control of the situation. And I think also because his kids are adults, like, it's not just that they're adults, go live your own life. I'm not really your parent anymore. You go in the world and figure it out. But I think that as his kids became adults, they didn't have to be under his control. I think we saw this a lot, especially in like the moves and everything, where anytime they moved and the kids had a problem with it for valid reasons, I feel like he would always say, oh, well, I'm the parent, and if you're under my roof, you do what I say, in this ultimate control. But once they moved out and had their own lives and were in charge of their environment and everything, they didn't have to do that anymore. Like, they had this freedom to call him out and challenge him. And he just can't, I just think he can't handle that. He can't handle that anybody would have a voice or opinion or would have a problem with something he's doing. And just like on a personal note, beyond frustrating to me to hear him talk this way. I mean, I myself have, didn't have a good father and never really, besides my grandfather, never had like another father figure in my life. And I just think it would be crushing to hear your dad talk like this, that it's just not worth the effort to him to reach out and have a more, like, even just apologize. Like, you just get over yourself and your pride and your ego. Like, it's just so disheartening to me. And that basically these kids are left without a father. Like, they have to have the sentiment of, like, protecting their families, they get married and have kids, or their environment of what they are. They have to choose to have boundaries. And I just think it's so sad, and that Kody is just fucking missing the mark in a huge, major way. Where literally he could call every one of his kids or FaceTime them or whatever and just say, I'm sorry and I love you. And he wouldn't have to say anything else. And he could make that effort with every single one of his kids and just start small. Just start with small conversations. Don't be antagonistic. Don't try and blame their moms or blame them or lash out at them. But all you'd have to do is just say, I'm sorry and I love you. End of phone conversation. Like, just, that might be the only place he can start with some of his kids. But it's like, he would have to get over his ego and pride that it's not about him. So this episode just really got to me in a huge way of, I just hate that there are people like this in the world. You're part of it. You birthed these kids. You brought these kids into this world. And now you're just flaking out on them. For what? Your second chance family with Robyn? Whatever's so great about her, I don't even know. But now because you love her and she's benefiting you in such a good way, then you can love on her kids. If anything, I would think if Robyn could hear this, if Robyn could get this into her brain, just because you're the favorite now doesn't mean you always will be. Just because you're in the inner circle now and being treated well doesn't mean you'll always be. Because if he's willing to do this to so many other people in his life, he's going to end up doing it to you. He's going to end up doing it to your kids. It's not a possibility. It's inevitable. It's like what is that? The bad guy in the Avengers movie, Thanos. It's inevitable that he's going to end up treating you this way and your kids that way. You're not special. You're not separate. It's going to end badly. And I wish that she could see that, if anything, for the sake of her own kids. But I don't think she will. I don't think she'll change. I don't think Kody will change. I don't see any of these relationships changing. And as far as sister wife episodes, this is one that just had me on where I wanted to rant. This just had me on a thing where I had so much to say and had such strong feelings about it that I wanted to talk about it on here. And just like, just let everybody know, like, I've been a fan of the show for a long time, and I definitely think there's other episodes where I've had strong emotions and felt a certain way, but this is the first time that it felt personal to me, of if I could go in my history and with my father, and if he could have been a better man and made different choices and be more involved, it would have had this huge impact on not just my life, but my siblings' life as well. So in the end, it's just so sad. It's so sad because he could be better and he flat out chooses not to. And then I want to end this episode saying, fuck Kody Brown and how dare he mention Isabel's name? I feel like he almost shouldn't be able to even say her name. He made a choice to not go to a surgery that is a major surgery. When we heard, like, at first it was like they're kind of downplaying it, but I remember when Christine talked about it more, like, yeah, they're going to have to, like, open her whole side to go in and put these things in to fix her back. Like, that is so major. And she really wanted him there, and she needed him there. And all he could offer her was a fucking sweatshirt. He couldn't be there for her. So how dare he say that he recognizes that as a mistake? And, or even his attitude's like, maybe a mistake. How dare him? You should be on your hands and knees begging for Isabel's forgiveness, telling her that you are the most shitty person in the entire world, that you fucked up so bad that you missed that. And you should be doing every single fucking thing you can to make it up to her. You know, he doesn't deserve Isabel as a daughter. She's very sweet, very nice, and very easy to forgive. And I feel like that relationship could be resolved so fucking easily. So I am so livid, so over the top, so heated about that. Because how dare him? How dare him? It's like sometimes I just don't even have the words for how upset that makes me. And how just pissed off I am at him that he's just like, oh, well, that was a mistake. It's like you went to the grocery store and you bought the wrong food or something. It's not enough to rectify the situation. It's not enough, in my opinion. I think Isabel would easily forgive him, or may already has. But I feel like if I was Christine, or even a sibling or anybody else that saw this happen, I just feel like I would not easily forgive that. Because it's not only you didn't show up, but you made a clear choice that you preferred members in the family over your other kids. She needed you more than whatever the youngest girl's name is, and Solomon and the kids in Robyn's house. She needed you more. And you weren't fucking there. So how dare you say her name? I think I could go on and on about that, but I'm just going to go ahead and end the episode there. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And we'll be back next week with episode 5.